Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from them, Fear City, out October 28th on Steamhammer SPV. The album has 14 tracks, 47 minutes in length, and this is the band's fourth full-length studio record. They are an international heavy metal band. This is a concept album that follows in line with the previous three records, but this one, the story is set in New York City in 1981. Therefore, Fear City is the name of the record. Now, as far as the concept is concerned, the design is there to enhance that same concept, to enhance that same story. Not just from telling the story itself, but creating a visual in the mind of the listener. I think that's really important when it comes to concept records. These guys know how to do them, and they do them really well. Adding interludes, intros, outros that help bring the songs together, that help unify every single track under one single umbrella, but also give you a sense of continuity as far as that same story is concerned. All of these elements are extremely important when it comes to a concept record, and these guys know exactly how to put it together in order for that story to come to life as you're listening to it chapter in and chapter out. As far as the sound is concerned, I felt like the record was slightly different from the first to the second half. On the first half, I felt like the vocals, for example, were a little bit more linear and the sound was a little bit more dynamic, using the keyboards a lot more in order to create a cinematic, almost a level of fantasy to the atmosphere, to the aura that the tracks put forward. The second half of the album feels a lot more dynamic vocally, but feels a lot heavier and linear sound-wise. This is an interesting approach and matches where you're going with the story. At the beginning of the record, you have a sense of setting up what the concept of the album is all about. Where you are, where are the characters, what's happening, why are we in New York City? So there's a lot of questions that the listener has right at the beginning, and adding that level of fantasy, it makes some sense. It creates a much larger atmosphere, a much larger cinematic presence towards the experience of the listener and how the story is coming to life. In the second half of the album, it's more about movement. The story gains a lot more life. It becomes a lot more energetic. You could say that the climax of the concept really comes in the second half of the album. So because of that, you're going to see more of a dynamic movement vocally, and you're going to feel like the tracks are a little bit heavier with a lot more intensity, because that's just where you are in the concept. That's just where you are in the story. And while I understand this idea, and while this idea matches the overall design of the record, it makes the album feel slightly unbalanced. I felt like in the first half of the album, there was perhaps a little bit too many keyboards, and that diluted the experience that the drums and guitars could have offered. Because when you get into that second half, you really feel the power of the drums. The drums on this album have a lot of strength, they have a lot of heaviness, and therefore they bring power into the forefront. But because of how the mix is put together and the impact that the keyboards have in that first half, while you feel them, you don't necessarily notice them, at least not as much in the forefront as you do in that second half. And once you see them in the forefront, you almost wish that some of the other tracks had that same sort of feel, that same sort of impact, that same sort of robust soundscape to them, because this drum sound is really outstanding throughout the entire album. It's just a little bit more hidden on a few tracks. The same thing could be said for the guitars. I really enjoyed the guitar sound throughout the entire record. The solo sections always add value to the songs. Sometimes they add value in terms of creating the sonic experience that you expect within the track, letting the songs breathe a little bit better. And sometimes they add value because they add to the atmosphere, the darkness, the movement, the despair that the tracks have. The guitar solo is adding to that experience, making it a lot more palpable. So throughout, I really enjoyed the guitars, but once again, they had a little bit more drive. They were a little bit more in charge in the second half of the record versus the first half. This difference in sound, it's impossible not to notice. It dilutes itself as you're moving along, because as you're getting deeper and deeper into the story, things are changing around you, and therefore the sound, vocals, everything is morphing, everything is changing. But there's a clear-cut, defined line between what you experience on one side versus the other. I would like the record to be a little bit more balanced, or if you're going to have songs that have that cinematic approach, then blend that cinematic approach throughout the entire record and not put all of them on one end of the album and everything else on the other spectrum. It would make the experience feel more robust all around. It would give the record a more continuous flow from start to finish, and not necessarily have this clear cut that really divides what the record offers on one end versus the other. Now, that dynamic movement of the vocals would also been interesting to see some of it at the start. I'm not saying as much as at the end because it doesn't match the story. It wouldn't match the dynamic movement that the story gives you and that the characters have within it. But some breadcrumbs earlier on in the record would set the table a lot better for what you're going to experience down the line. You have to be able to start to give the listener some clues in terms of what the album is going to develop into. And this record vocally doesn't really do that. And that also helps define that clear cut between the first half and the second half. All around, not as a consistent record as some of their previous albums, but if there's one thing these guys know how to do is concept records. And from an overall concept perspective, the album delivers. The story is interesting, the story is intriguing, it keeps you captivated, and it keeps you coming back for more, because you just feel like perhaps you missed some clues, perhaps you missed some pieces, and it's a story that is really compelling in how it comes across and how it's told. I just wish the experience was a little bit more equal, a little bit more cohesive from start to finish. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with 191st Street. It builds up with a great intro, and then that intro really helps set the mood for what the rest of the track is going to be all about. The drums have a lot of warmth, the guitars are driven but melodic, and all together allowing the track to have a great tempo, pushing the listener forward. This song really pushes the listener into the streets. You honestly feel the environment around you by the sound that they've created, and that is a great thing to have on a song like this. Now, the vocal range helps tell the story, but it also gives life to the story. It gives life to the characters within the story. The drums are outstanding throughout. I really enjoyed the drum sound on this track, and the guitars have an incredible impact. The two elements working together as one create the foundation, create the cobblestones that this street is built on. And then the vocal range, the dynamic vocal range, brings those characters into that street and gives them life and energy. The solo on this track enhances the mood, the spirit. It doesn't impact the sound as much as it impacts the atmosphere that the track is trying to create. I love the volume, I love the movement, I love the life, and definitely I love the heaviness that the track offers. Next we have Death on the Downtown Metro. The guitar opening sets the tone for what the track is going to be all about, with the drums creating the perfect backdrop. I honestly felt like the drums were slightly behind the guitars, creating the foundation, building those blocks, and then allowing the guitars to slide a little bit more into the front and have a little bit more of a drive to be the fuel to the fire that this song really has. The vocal range and the layers within that vocal range helps make this song more dynamic vocally, because musically the track feels consistent, it feels compact, but you need to create ebbs and flows, and I felt like most of the ebbs and flows were really coming from the range, the vocal range, and the layers that vocal range had, giving a lot of texture to how the track comes across. It also helps give darkness and bring a little bit of horror into the overall track, into the mood, into the atmosphere of the song. A track that has great intensity, and the vocals really help define that intensity, that atmosphere, and how you're going to perceive it. Last but not least, the Deconsecrated House of Sin. Heavy, driven, great tempo. I absolutely love this song. It's my favorite song on the entire album, and it's perhaps the most linear, the most basic, I would even say the simplest song that they put together on this record outside of the interludes. The simplicity of the song is what makes it great, because you don't have to peel any layers, you don't have to dig deep in order to get what the song is all about. This song is a hook built on a hook. The verses are hooky, the chorus is super hooky, everything is catchy and hooky about this track. It has great movement, it moves very linear sound-wise, it has a great tempo, so it has intensity and it pushes forward, it's always going forward. It's never really pausing, it's never really breaking. And then once you get into that chorus, the chorus just comes to life. The simplicity of the chorus, how the vocals deliver it, how everything comes together with the sound, adding some drums in behind it to give it a little bit more volume, to give it a little bit more heaviness, but using those clean vocals to really make the chorus come to life and be noticed. Easy to remember, easy to sing along. It's a great track all around. A track that doesn't really change too much or change at all from start to finish. The only thing that it gives you is a slightly hookier chorus than the energy that you already had in the verses. My favorite track in the entire record. This is it. Damn Fear City, on October 28th on Steam Hammer SPV. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.